This episode, I interview Suji Yan, the founder of Mask Network. Mask Network has raised close to $50 million across multiple rounds. We talked about how they raised the money that they did, what technique, token sales, VC, combination of which Suji describes in detail. Mask Network is effectively a bridge between the Web2 world and Web3. And what that means is they're a layer on top of the Web2 world. So they allow you to move between Twitter, Facebook by creating these networks. So you can pay people, for instance, on top of Twitter. There's many different applications that are built on Mask. Suji names a few of those. It's an interesting guy. He has a deep crypto perspective, which I very much enjoyed. And at the end, we talked about the politics, the geopolitical landscape, how crypto is impacting that. Suji is from China. We talked about his time in Shanghai, and we kind of mapped out some scenarios of how the world can continue to evolve with decentralization kind of being opposed to the centralized way of life. So all that and more. Hope you enjoy. Here is Suji Yan. All right, Suji, we're live. Thanks for sharing your time and your story. I'm excited to get to know you a little bit more. You're running an awesome project called Mask. Looks like this was one of the first few things you did out of school, or at least the first few years. You're a little bit younger than I am. You were saying a little bit pre-show, but you moved from China to the US here for a while. First thing I want to ask you is, what did you see prior to starting Mask? Crypto is happening in the world. You're excited by that. Was there a specific conversation or insight you had to say this is how you wanted to jump into the game and this is what you wanted to first pursue?
Yeah. So I studied in the state, right? Doing, I think like other engineers, I got computer stuff background, and I dropped on 2017, but I really go to school. I spent 2 years at the UFI, Urbana-Champaign, and 1 year at the U of Tokyo. I think during my college day, on one side, I was a typical engineering student, right? Just coding, all the other stuff. And I also jumped into the crypto rabbit hole because I was in the AI, I was in parallel computation, distributed system. So it's very connected to the early crypto, right? Especially mining stuff. And I was lucky. I was connected to one of the professor at the UFI, Andrew Miller. He's the co-founder and chairman of the Zcash Foundation. So he's OG. And my girlfriend that time, now she's my wife, she's involved with the Bitcoin Core, or the core company of Bitcoin Core organization, Bitstream, Blockstream, right? And she's involved in that, and I was connected to all these people as well. But I think the ultimate goal, the ultimate reason drive me into crypto, is not really from the technical perspective, right? Well, technical perspective is a ledger. It's a cool ledger. It's a slow, immutable ledger. That's cool. But I was also in journalism. I was in journalism for a few years as an independent journalist, and I worked with several well-known and respectful firm for independent journalism. And during that process, starting from 2014 and 2015, people start to use Telegram and Signal, right? And then there's some privacy coin kicking. There's some deal sourcing using crypto. And I cover the Fukushima nuclear plant in Japan back in 2016. I was 20 that year, and I did pay one of my stocks in crypto. Well, that's really amazing. You just connect someone on Signal, fully encrypted, end-to-end encrypted, and then the guy gonna ping you, hey dude, I'm not gonna accept US dollar. Pay me at least in Bitcoin, right? Hopefully Ethereum or other cryptocurrency as well. So that really drive me to jump into this industry because it's more than tech now. At least back in 2016, price is really in the bear market. And I can feel it's not about technology. It's about how this tiny ledger gonna reshape the society. So I think, yeah, I should try. I should just full-time jump in. I quit my AI track. It was mainly learning AI back in college, and really dive into the rabbit hole back then. And in 2017, I quit the college, started to found this company, and later become this foundation that deliver mass network. Yeah, that's my story. Yeah.
Yeah, and you said you were a journalist in Japan?
Yeah, I was independent journalist. I coordinated with several media, Japan, China, US, and I think some of my famous report was about the Fukushima nuclear plant. That's 5 years after the disaster, after earthquake. I was doing field study. Actually, I really got into the nuclear plant polluted area, restricted area. I really get into that personally, and I really took photos and interviewed people, and they did later that become an article and several small documentaries. Yeah, that's 26.
Wow. And what were you investigating a particular angle of this?
Yeah.
Because
the Japanese government claimed back then that this area is now again suitable for living, and I really suspect that, and I got sauce. And I worked with a Chinese media firm and also several U.S. firm, several U.S. News firm, and they really suspect that as well. So besides us, I believe there's other media really get into the Fukushima nuclear plant, and I applied for a license. I actually got in 2016, July, August. I was 20 that year, and there's someone give us hint themselves. And yeah, in order to thank to that guy, we actually chat on Signal, and we use Bitcoin. We never use cash, and we are semi-anonymous until the news get released. Right? Yeah.
Wow. And had that changed anything? I guess the discovery or the journalist work you did that change the policy of the Japanese government or internationally, the attitudes people had towards Fukushima?
Hopefully it worked. I don't think it really had that big impact. But there's more than one media, one newspaper covering that. There's several ones, and we're just one of the top from Asia, and they do have a strong impact overall. And as mentioned, all those OG journalists are on Signal Telegram. They're like, hey, this is my Bitcoin address. Later on, they're like, hey, this is my Ethereum address. Yeah. So that was intact, right? So I understand how this ledger work. So that's the moment I think, I should jump in. Forget of AI and other stuff. I got that background as well, but I think this is much more interesting. It's much more game changing. Yeah. And masks now, maybe I'll just give it high levels. How I see it is a layer on top of Web2, and it allows people to facilitation of crypto on top of that. So you can send money back and forth to people, say on Twitter, if just having their usernames without Twitter needing to do anything itself. How do you describe it in your words? And how is that wrong? I just say mask is the bridge between Web2 and Web3, especially for decentralized social network. Just like DeFi is a decentralized finance, a revolution against bank and TradeFi, NFT is a revolution against Hollywood, right? And media and entertainment industry. I think mask and the decentralized social army is against the traditional social network. But unlike the others, we don't we don't want to persuade the user to migrate. I think it's super hard, and it's even impossible for the user to migrate, especially think about the billions of users we have on Facebook and Twitter. So I think the best way is to add a layer on top of it, is to build a bridge between Web2 and Web3. For example, by using Mask on the Chrome or on your browser, it's a simple extension. By using that, you can tip your friend, right? You can do NFT airdrop. You can show your best NFT, and you can do all the amazing stuff that's available only in Web3 and not available in Web2. And it's also really cool that a lot of our ideas get adopted by other large platforms, but we always have new, better ideas. And Mask is also an open system, so people can build freely on top. That's something we want to let people to build. Yeah.
And what have been a few of the milestones for you? I know you, in terms of capitalization, you guys have raised 40 plus million. Was there a combination of token sales and institutional VCs, or I'm curious how you've progressed as the project has grown?
I got this early idea in 2017. I don't really have a deck or a roadmap, but 2017 was early, and I was lucky to meet several OG VCs, including one of the early investors of Coinbase Ripple, all this Circle. And these OG, they're like, oh, okay, Suji, you're cool. You're a cool kid. You drop out from college, and this is a nice idea. And no matter how you're going to achieve that, we're going to just back you with the angel check, right? And it was a great time. Then the ICO bubble come and busted, right? 2080. And it's really hard to raise after that. So I put lots of my personal money in, and we keep a lean team. We got like around 10 people, but we keep the lean team until 2020. So we have the first roadmap in 2080, and then we raised several other small checks from OG investors and the personal investors, including the co-founder of Neo, and including Hashkey, which their mothership was the first institutional investor of Ethereum. And then in 2019, April, we released the beta product, and 2019 later, we released the Mass Network 1.0. The first functionality is to send encrypted message, encrypted by your Ethereum or any kind of blockchain private key, or any kind of like a cryptographic private key. The second functionality is the peer-to-peer payment and lucky drop. In Lunar New Year, you're gonna have those lucky drop. It's really cool. And just paying Vitalik one day, saying, hey, we have a partnership with MakerDAO, the DAI stablecoin. And DAI stablecoin was really small back then, before the DeFi hack. They only have like 50K address holders, which is really small for a stablecoin. That we all think it's a great idea because the DAI word is from Chinese, right? And we think, okay, we can do random drop on Twitter, stablecoin, no KYC, no AML, really cool. And then we pin OGs from EF, and I send these screenshots to a group with all the OGs, and Vitalik, he noticed that. He's like, oh, this is cool, and he just randomly send a red pocket. So a lucky drop.
Send a what?
Yeah, red pocket. There's some ETH inside the red pocket. And it's like, you can claim that, and you can let other people to claim that. And when you claim that, the money goes to your wallet. It's protected by a smart contract. Huh. And you can share that to your other friend as well. It's really like a social game, right? I give you a red pocket. You just hand to other people.
Wait, what is this from? Or red pocket?
It's a Lunar New Year custom, right? And people, you put money in the red pocket, and you just give to other people. That's really.
I thought it was a crypto thing, but it's just it's not a crypto thing. It's just,
and because DAI got the name from the Chinese character Dai, and also Wei Dai. It was a really great partnership, and we create some hype for the crypto community in 2020. That is 1 year after our launch and 2 years after the company incorporated. Then we start to deliver more and more functionalities. Well, if you can send encrypted message and send money over Twitter, you can also send decentralized files, right? You should be able to store file directly to Arweave and Filecoin. So we partner with Arweave and Filecoin. Later, we swap token with them. And we also approached to Uniswap. And it was also the very early days of Uniswap. They were planning the airdrop. And we approached them and say, what if we can trade on Twitter? I think that's the time we got another hype that people think, oh, wow, we can trade on Twitter. Because when you use the DeFi and DEX, you don't need to have KYC and AML, at least, right, for now. And people are like, oh, I received a red packet from Vitalik, 1 ETH. I want to sell it. And you just directly sell on Twitter. Feels like you're selling on Twitter. The backend could be some smart contract like 0x or Uniswap. And the Uniswap tweet, the Uniswap official Twitter endorse us and they show on this collaboration. They're like, oh, that's really cool, right? That was beautiful early days of DeFi summer. And people are super interested in this concept because very obviously we're going to decentralize the money and we're going to decentralize the entertainment business. And we're going to decentralize the social network one day. So we are on that front line, right? So that's the time we start to raise more institutional money. 2020, I think more VC established, they survived the winter and start to deploy more capital. We raised around 5 million in the private market, including some OGs like SBF, Alameda, and DCG, Balaj from Coinbase, and there's other OG fund like Hashkey Fundamental Labs. But overall, we didn't raise a lot from private market, but we plan to decentralize and it actually create some hype in 2021 last year, end of February. So when we got more and more functionalities, people are, like developer always question me, like say, hey, Suji, what's the mask indeed? Like, because you can send money, you can send tweets, you can send encrypted message, you can send file, you can program on top, right? You can say, hey, I put the stablecoin payment and the file service together, so you can do pay to unlock. It's more like a developer middleware. And our answer is like we're the bridge between Web2 and Web3, especially for social networks. And the next question will be, hey, Suji, what if I was developing and posting some, really bad content? Will you censor us or will you delete our application? And it's really a dilemma for a company, right? Because you don't really have the answer. You either ignore them and you're gonna have like regulator coming later on, or say, hey, we're gonna support you, but you can't pretend it's not a business. So the best way is to decentralize the protocol, right? Even though tokenization is just the beginning of it, it's not finished yet, right? But we think it's the right time, and we were lucky that 2021 is really nice. There's a bullish year. So we launched our token called Mask, M-A-S-K, during the February 2021 February. We have the ITO, initial Twitter offering, and then the LBP for the auction. And we spent that's been like 3 days actually. And we actually reached the highest gas fee ever happened on Ethereum. Before the other side, Ape NFT, the gas fee reached 4,300 GWA.
Wait. Let me pause you. So you're saying you had a token sale, initial Twitter offering. So you advertise that you're airdropping or giving away tokens. You're advertising on Twitter?
Just follow. What happened is you install our extension, or if you are in compatible other client, right? No matter you install this thing or be compatible with the client, and you just go follow Mass Network on Twitter, and you're gonna wait for our tweets. So our tweets.
Oh, okay, got it.
Get the airdrop or get the get the token for sale.
And you can't do this unless you have you can't send tokens on Twitter now. I mean, that's not embedded into Twitter's functionality. You have to there's no ITO, initial Twitter offering, unless you use Mask to do that, right?
So obviously Twitter for regulatory reason, they will not ever, able to do that. And we are a layer on top, right? So you can let Vitalik drop something, and Mask officially can drop something, or you can drop an NFT. You can ask the user to pay to get the drop. So we program some smart contract, and we deploy that on the East layer 1, and we just make it happen on Twitter. But if you don't have Mask extension or Mask compatible client installed, it's just like a picture, or just like a JPG, PNG, which is not an NFT, which is not a token, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you were talking about the gas fees, you're effectively saying that aside from the Bored Apes project, yours was the most trafficked, and thus the gas fees were the highest.
Yeah, I think the gas fee on the highest moment reached the 4,300 GWay, 400 to 2,000 GWay-ish for 1 hour, 2 hour-ish. And because the sale is not that long, but at least for that moment, people are crazy. Like, oh, you can actually buy something on Twitter. It's a token, right? And they actually, a lot of people bought it. And we also did a massive airdrop, and that's the start of our decentralization process. Still a long process ahead, but that was a great launch. And during that launch, we raised $43 million for the DAO, for the token sale and the airdrop, the LBP, So that's the majority of our money raised,
Nice. Well, that's a solid chunk. That's definitely enough to hire more than 10 people. Where are you guys now? So, I mean, let me ask it a better way. What is the next feature deployment that you're excited about?
Yeah. So right after the launch of our token, we start to realize we can't do this alone, right? Because we might able to do the airdrop functionality. We might able to do the NFT functionalities, but there will be hundreds functionalities ahead. The people want Web3 and Web2, but we don't really know what they want, right? We need talent, young people to really build on top. Just like Vitalik and the Ethereum Foundation, they don't really predict the existence of DeFi. They might able to give some guidance, but they have to wait until Compound, Uniswap, Avi the founders really jump into the Ethereum ecosystem to build on top. That's the time they realize, oh, people actually need this kind of functionalities. And we don't know what's going to happen between the Web2 and Web3 either, right? So we start to deploy grants and donations and strategic checks for founders that need money and need support. That including a lot of cool projects. For example, last year, I think around March, April, Send, funded by Chicago founder Cameron, they helped Jet Dorsey to sell his first tweet on Twitter. And Send is built on top of Polygon, and we also support the integration to mass network version of Twitter. And so you can buy, sell tweets on Twitter. In bull market, people love that, but I think in bear market, just people can't really sell tweets. But it actually creates some hype, and we become a.
And so, Mask facilitated. Is it a private company? I'd never heard of Send. Send allows you to buy and sell tweets using the Mask network or in partnership with Mask?
You can do it as standalone. The NFT is minted on Polygon. But we actually provide a better user interface. We integrate that. We did a grant, and we're proud to become a shareholder. We just figure out they need some support, right? And think, okay, I'm going to write a check. And that was really the first check we write, and we did donations to several other projects as well from the DAO. Right, the DAO got the treasury of Mask token and some other token, some ETH.
Right.
We just send it to the independent developers and the smaller developer groups, and they use money to develop something on top of Mask, or going to supplement with our decentralized social network ecosystem. So that's the beginning of our ecosystem. Yeah.
And so you're referring to, is it a foundation officially, this money that you're giving to developers to build on top of the Mask network?
Yeah. Actually, right now, if you go check Gitcoin, there's a Web3 social grant happening right now. There's a few people submitting grants and bounties on top of that. And we've been donating Gitcoin bounties and the matching pool since our launch. We donate Mask token mainly, but we also donate some ETH if they need ETH or stablecoin if they think it's better. That's what we are trying to do in last year. Last year, we really scaled a lot of our manpower. We were 20 people back in around less than 20 actually. Around 2021 January, we were only 15 people, and now we got more than 100 employees worldwide. We got people in Singapore, Tokyo, State. Yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome. I want to ask you about this foundation a little bit. So, does mechanically the way it worked is that a portion of the tokens that were allocated goes, the ownership of that is to a private company, LLC maybe, who is in charge of distributing that money to developers who are building on top of the network. And I assume there's some governance mechanism of that foundation to approve those grants. Is that right?
So right now, there's the nonprofit part and the for-profit part, right? And we value the nonprofit part a lot because no one knows what's going to happen in the future, right? And the Uniswap exists because the CN Foundation donated $1 million back in the early days. So the DAO grant the foundation to use different vehicle, as you mentioned, to keep deploying donation to Gitcoin and other developers. And we encounter those amazing young developers and young talents or nerdy talents. They build something on top of Mask. Sometimes they have their own great ideas that can help Mask to really bridge this two world better. So we donate to them. Some of them are really more than public good. They decide to become a for-profit, token project, and I think that's also great. If it's a non-profit token project, public good, we love to support and refer to other larger foundation like the Filecoin Foundation or the Ethereum Foundation. But for-profit project, we love to refer to our shareholders, our token holders, right? And they are larger funds, so they deploy checks invested to these projects. And we did follow-up checks that become our venture arm. Actually, we haven't announced it, but we've donated more than 100 plus projects, mainly in the social and social related fields. And from that 100 projects, we also write strategic checks that's more commercial to around 80 projects. And that's a lot of work, a lot of build ongoing, and we haven't announced it yet.
Yeah. Okay. So you've invested in or donated to 80 projects. How is that? There's the return on investment from the nonprofit foundation side is the value growth of the token, right? That would be the measure of success. How is the screening of the developers done? I've heard from a couple different people that have interviewed founders that there's a challenge in this model where the money that some people are going around to multiple foundations and submitting grants over and over again, and they're getting awarded the grants and then nothing's happening. Is that something you've seen? I would imagine, given that it's like an industry-wide thing. How do you decide? How is the governance structured to allocate those grants?
Honestly, that exists, and I'd say during the bull market last year, a lot of independent developers are overpaid. I mean, like they definitely have a lot of value, but writing a smart contract, should not worth $50K, and 2K bounty is a lot in the traditional open source community. It's a lot, right? And so we use several ways. First, we keep donating to Gitcoin. The code of voting, especially the code of voting with potentially soulbound token, is something. You can always trust what people like, right? And that might not be technically really deliverable, but people really want to have some features, some functionalities. And Gitcoin's code of voting, code of funding is a really great social experience. So we were donating since the 2021, the beginning of 2021.
Yeah. To Gitcoin?
Yeah, to Gitcoin's matching pool. So we become the Gitcoin run GR partners, and there are independent hackathon partners for almost like 10 plus rounds, maybe.
Wow. 10 plus hackathons?
Yeah.
Sorry, give me a little back. What is Gitcoin doing for you guys?
Oh, so Gitcoin is having the pool, right? The matching pool. And many money was from the Ethereum Foundation back in the early days, and now they have gradually more funding members, and they're letting developers and people to vote using their own donations. So, for example, people think that idea is really cool. No matter whether it's deliverable on tech perspective, people are going to say, okay, I'm going to donate my $100, and the matching pool, we're going to use the code of funding mechanism to matching the donation. So the more people donate to that grant, the matching pool will also donate more to that grant. That's one way we were trying. It turns out really interesting. I won't say it's super efficient as the Facebook or Google, because they force people to work. That's better in efficiency, but that's less in creativity, right? And the other way we were doing is really tell the developers we're providing something unique in the market right now, unique in the industry right now. The problem you mentioned, I think, often happens in layer one, because developer were pitching the foundation, say, hey, I have a DEX, I'll deploy on the 5 layer 2 and 3 layer 1. Please pitch me how much grant you want to give me, right? And that's bad. That's bad. I mean, they need money, but I think it's a bad competition. And we wanna tell the developers and the other foundations, like, hey, Filecoin maybe is doing great on storage. Let's say people want to use decentralized storage on top of Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Reddit, but Facebook and Twitter, they won't really integrate Filecoin, maybe until 5 years later, and we can add a layer on top. So what about we can do a joint bounty together? People who are interested in decentralized storage and decentralized social network can partner together. The same thing can also come to other decentralized social projects. For example, Lens, we haven't finished the details, but we really like to see how people can use Lens to port their social graph relationship, right? There's many other examples. For example, we invested in, the venture arm invested in RSS3, and we also donated to RSS3 Foundation. We share the advertisement and cost together. And it's great. They have this feed of Web3, and we integrate that right on top of Twitter and Instagram, maybe potentially to all the other Web2 platforms as well. That's how Mask work with other teams. A bad example. This is bad example, but I think the example will be really similar to Tencent. The good version of Tencent, not evil version, the copy version, because they core real games for many game companies. They core them and they invest in hundreds plus projects, right? But they're corporation. They do have a lot of problem with Web2. They monopolize platform. For Mask, we were like, oh, this is a cool idea. Turn every tweet into an NFT. That's a nice idea. Web3 feed. We can give you a donation. And then later on, we figure out, oh, we actually should raise money from VC because this is going to have commercial value. Our venture arm going to come in. It's independent decision. The venture arm is run by Cecilia Lee. She was the director of OKX and at the venture arm of OKX. So she's crypto OG and investor OG. So we're just one of the LP, right? We're just one of the partner. They come in and independently evaluate, a lot of commercial value, and Mask already did a donation. So yeah, we're going to double down with cash, and we're going to call our investors, say, oh, that's a really great company. You should come in. That's a really great token project. You should write a check. And they wrote a check. That's how we work. And I hope people can keep building on top of Web2, but have the Web3 features, right? Turn every tweet into an NFT. Have Web3 feeds on Twitter and Facebook. Port your Facebook social graph to Lens. Something like that. I don't know.
Wait, let me ask you this. What stops, say, one protocol, one network creates NFTs for all the tweets, and that every tweet has an NFT in it or associated with it. Then another protocol does the same thing. Do you now have two networks that each have NFTs for all the tweets? Or is that a recognized problem?
No, they just compete each other, right? It's like
they just compete.
For example, for storage, at least there's like 5 solutions out there, right? There's the RV, Filecoin, SIA, maybe other like new solutions, and it's up to the user which solution they want to use, and they may choose any of the solution. Depends on different scenario, right? They might not want permanent storage. They might want to store it for one day, or they may want permanent storage. But most of our user, they don't like store it on AWS, right? So that's how we partner with all these.
Well, I see it as slightly different though. Say if you're storing a file, there is a file that's stored somewhere that you have access to it. Say like it's more obvious in a physical piece. Like if I have my water bottle and this has an NFT associated with it, say there's 2 competing networks that each claim ownership of my water bottle. Well, at the end of the day, it's here in my office. And so whoever has ownership of it has to deal with that. Like Twitter owns all the tweets. They could just take a tweet down if they want, and that would make an NFT of that tweet. It would kind of make it irrelevant. And my question is, if there's 2 competing networks, each of which claim NFTs for those tweets, and you're trading the value of those NFTs, just like art, right? On NFTs with art, it's like if I say I own this piece of art, and then another protocol pops up, and then I buy that piece of art on that protocol. Is there how is ownership effectively? I mean, does ownership even make sense in that situation, or just
eventually all these decisions back to the users, back to the owner of the data, right?
Creator, right?
And it's not us, it's not Polygon, it's not Sand, it's Jack himself. Think he's minting an NFT on this, platform called Sand. And that happened to collaborate with Mask and Polygon, and we're proud that Jack likes Sand, and he sold the first NFT. It's him. He using the cryptography key to sign the transaction and say, that's me, I'm going to sell it. If Jack don't like Sand, he's, like other platform doing the same thing. Great. So that's something we want to provide to the founders, to the developers, say, there's many things Web2 can do, but you can do on top of it with the Web2 technology. And you need a middleware, because otherwise, how can you put all these things together?
Yeah, exactly. And the middleware, Do you view a key part of what the middleware does is validate that the authorization transaction, we'll just call it action done on the Web2 is who this person is? Like Jack, I'm assuming you mean Jack, the founder of Twitter, NFT'd his first tweet, and he has to prove that he owns that Twitter account, right? And is that kind of what Mask does? Is it saying, okay, if you're logged into this Twitter account, then you can approve it?
So there are right now at least 10 DID, right? 5 from Web2 perspective, from the Web3 consortium, Tim Berners-Lee perspective. Another 5 from Ethereum perspective, right? East logging, Ceramic, CyberConnect. I can't recall all these. And
what is DID?
Decentralized Identity. Yeah, decentralized identity.
Okay, gotcha.
So decentralized identity binds your identity to a cryptographic key. It's a decentralized one, so you don't need to have the Suji at apple.com, right? You don't have the owner of the identity. And there are multiple competing decentralized identity out there. There are multiple competing storage solution out there. And from math perspective, we love them more. So we did several donation and we did several check, and we are incubating our DID aggregator called Nexar ID that is going to embed it natively in Mask. So no matter which DID solution you are using, ENS, Ceramic, doesn't matter, you can all aggregate together. So if you prove you're Jet.C cryptographically somewhere, you're Jet.C then. If you can't prove that anywhere, then you're definitely not, right? So that's one of the reasons people need the middleware, because otherwise, there's so many different DID systems, so many different storage system, so many different DEX and DeFi system, and we are putting all together. And for developer, they only need to provide ideas and deliver it. They can provide ideas of pay to unlock on Twitter. They can deliver it by using any of the functionality, any of the plugins we provide, and they can just plug and play.
Got it.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It really comes down to the originator. And what we were a little bit pre-show, we were talking about crypto more broadly. What is it about it that gets you inspired when you think of like society as a whole, or like our Earth? Like we're floating around in a solar system on this giant rock, and there's 9 billion of us or so, and we're making technology. Even technology is an abstract word. We're making a way of organizing our communication such that one person or group of people can't destroy it or change it. And why is that valuable in your view? Today,
we all agree the great unification, the great union of all human beings is great, right? This is a really great mission for all of us. But we are all bounded by national boundaries, right? We are all bounded by laws and the identities we have as a human being, right? I was born in Shanghai, which was a beautiful city, and the Shanghainese people invest in Ethereum back in 2015 in their first institutional round. So it's really powerful for me. And Vitalik is from Canada, right? Russian-born Canadian, and lived some year in state and lived some year in Shanghai, in other countries, Singapore as well. Satoshi, no one know who he, she, or they were, or maybe aliens, right? So I say like what really make me jump into this industry is like, I think these early pioneers, they already finish some really tough job. They already deliver us a relatively decentralized working public chain with the digital gold and the infinity computing machine out there. But the problem is not solved because we have a physical body, we have a physical identity, right? And we still have asset, and the asset need to be digitalized. That's partially done by DeFi and NFT already. And then you need to have digital free social space as well, free from any government, free from any wrongful information, free from any censorship. Unfortunately, that's really hard in Web2. and when I started mass networking in late 2017, there were very few decentralized social projects out there. So I feel like personally really responsible for that. I was lucky to earn some money in Bitcoin and Ethereum back in the days. I was like, okay, I can spend my money to build this, and I didn't expect that so hard. Even now with these money raised, I just say it's still a long journey. It's a long journey ahead. We always encounter new problems. Like, hey, okay, you store our data on IPFS, then you don't have a database. That's all the new problem we encountered. But I'm really, optimistic about the future. I just say, Balaj, he wrote a book recently called Network State. And I really agree on some of his opinion. Like we might just end up witness the collapse of nation state, of the traditional nation state we were born from, right? We all maybe enter network state, the kind of utopia state.
What is it?
Networks.
What does he call it?
Network
state. Yeah.
Yeah. We might enter there, and in the network state, you don't want to see a Facebook, and you don't want to see a bank as well. And well, there's someone fighting against bank. We're glad to have these pioneers. There's someone fighting against Hollywood, and we want to fight against the large platforms for social networks. And we were lucky that we were early, and we also have extra capital and experience to help the other people build on top.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I almost resist the idea that it's a fight. It almost feels more to me like an evolution.
Yes.
I wouldn't say that like the butterfly doesn't fight the caterpillar it once was. It just kind of evolves from it. And it feels like there's a major structural advantage that you have with decentralization from the centralized previous way of doing business or life and governance. And do you agree that there will be this almost like synchronized or nearly synchronized implosion of governments in our lifetime? Or do you see this as like a slow decrease of power of governments? I say that with the premise that the governments hold very large guns, right? All the large, right? China, Japan, United States, Russia. And I don't see them just kind of quietly saying, oh, you guys are building blockchain. Well, go ahead, have the money, have the means of identity. And I just don't see it kind of sailing out. Do you think how do you sort of see it shaking out?
I was hesitating back in the days, right? The mindfuck question we always ask ourselves, like, what if China or US ban mining? And it happened. And it's fine, nothing happened. I mean, it's the coin crashed and it's bounced back. And then I just say, what if the same foundation people get arrested? Well, it's happened, right? It's still fine. And there's still something really centralized right now. There's still something we can improve, but I think this thing is evolving. I'm really optimistic about the future. I was born in 1996, right? And in my high school, I learned all this cyberpunk stuff, and I read this story about EFF, about the founder of EFF, John Peterborough. He wrote this article, this statement back in 1996, the year I was born. It's called A Declaration of Independence for Cyberspace. It's a really nice article. Everyone should read it. Everyone in crypto or Web3 should read it. It's really powerful statement. It still, seems not realistic right now, but I'm really positive and optimistic about that future, that we will have an independent cyberspace. I used to live in 5 countries, maybe 6 now. And I'd love to explore to live in more countries, to embrace more cultures, to teach more people about decentralization, and to eventually bring mass adoption through decentralized social network. And I think that thing gonna come, right? That future gonna come. We're gonna have 2 identity. One is the nation state, the biological born identity that I'm Asian. I got like black hairs, black eyes, and I got my IDs. And then we got a relatively decentralized identity that in the metaverse we can social, we can trade, we can collect, we can play, we can work, and we die out in both places. That eventually, I'm really optimistic. I'm maybe over optimistic in this industry, but I think that's the field that help us survive 2 cycle. Personally, I survived 2 cycle, and the company survived one bear market, and we're gonna survive the upcoming one, and we're gonna keep building and fighting, and we can also encourage the younger team, say, hey, keep building, it's fine,
Yeah. And do you see it as just a constant chip away? Like there'll just be, first there's money, and then there is maybe identity, and then there is financial tools, but then it sort of branches out more into like healthcare, and other industries will become decentralized to eventually there'll be kind of political pressure to restructure the Constitution. Maybe I could see it happening. The United States is more, it's democratic. So if people wanted to change, they could put pressure on political leaders, and that eventually happens. China less so. I mean, China not at all, right? The decisions are top down, and so China could move quicker. That's the advantage of that organizational structure. But the downside is that if you don't want to make a change, then it just won't ever happen. And so there'd have to be like a confrontational revolt to change that. And then there's also smaller countries. I was talking to a guy from Liechtenstein, and there's a lot of more progressive countries in Eastern Europe that are making, rapid governmental regulatory innovation changes. Do you kind of see things centralizing geographically? Like you're pretty nomadic in where you live. Do you see a congregation of people into a new area, and maybe that area kind of gets formalized as a country of decentralization? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. I was in El Salvador 2 weeks ago, and I met the government official and local community, not developer, but local, like let's say crypto related community. It's great. The crime rate is actually lower than many years ago. Even though we think in province. I love to explore. I don't think Bitcoin as a legal tender solve most of the problem, but honestly, IMF won't solve problems, right? At least Bitcoin as legal tender can potentially solve some problem, and I'm trying to tell them you should be more friendly to other crypto, and they agree. They might make laws to legalize or major crypto and make them legal tender as well. These tiny spots are important, right? And if we date back 300 years, 200 years ago, or most of the modern Asian state, they weren't existed back in 200-300 years ago. And the history of corporation were just 400 years old. And we can see the acceleration of the history due to the growth and the development of technology. And I'd say I'm optimistic. I try to work out more, and I try to survive in the next 100 years. And when I was an old grandpa, I can see all these things come true. Probably not that old. Yeah. And
yeah. Well, I tell me if this is how you sort of see it. Potentially, I almost see it as a fork, right? It's like we're talking about power and the distribution of power, and power really meaning the ability to decide how the structure of decisions. Right now, most decisions that matter are going to be related to taxation as a means to collectively pool resources from a society. And then, so people debate taxation methodologies, how much people should get taxed. And there's a lot of political agitation about that. And it's a complicated, structure and tax code. Then there's the distribution of funds and the general role in government. Like, should the government provide healthcare, meaning that should it control and dictate the means of which people receive healthcare? I think most or just about all countries see one primary use for centralized government being the policing. So, people are doing illegal things. You can have police who are employed by the government enforce the rules. The rules I can see, if you picture the government as being three branches, the enforcement arm, the executive arm, the judicial arm, which is the judgment of breaking those laws, and then legislative. I see legislative as being the branch of government that is first and easiest to decentralize. And effectively, democracy is an attempt to decentralize that in and of itself. It's, not that dissimilar from voting on chain, right? You have like one vote, you can decide to not vote, but effectively like everyone gets one vote and then you're voting on different things. I'd say it's more, and maybe this is where they meet, right? You have right now just about every project I've seen has a direct one-to-one voting representation on topics. So, Mask has a vote that's up. Everyone votes with the tokens that they have. There's not really representatives, but I can see a world where, say Mask or any project gets big enough where they have representatives that you vote into office and they have term limits. And we're kind of converging on the same methodology, right? Like they're not that dissimilar. So I wonder if that's where they meet and the world just moves in that direction. I'm trying to uncover what specifically is the revolution fueled by. Like, where is the major problem in the old way of doing business? Maybe take it as a political lens. Like when we look at the governments, the way governments are organized. Where's the opportunity? Like, where does the momentum come from? Where do you get like tens or hundreds of millions of people like all united and pushing against something? I'm trying to picture what the narrative would be.
Yeah. So the physical world we have today, the nation state is, so all these revolutions in modern history is relatively, no matter which country, you at least have some constitutional, rights and relatively democrats, right? And relatively you have some kind of democracy. And on the other side, cyberspace, if we view the entire cyberspace as a new continent, right? And we just migrate ourselves and colonize colonize these AIs maybe, and that's actually it's not really capitalism at all. It's feudalism. It's medieval feudalism because you're gonna have Facebook Castle, Twitter War Garden, Snapchat War Garden. You have different kings, and when you want to walk out with all your money from Twitter land to Facebook land, they're gonna stop you, say, dude, you can't move all your data out. You can just go along yourself, become a nomad, and not move all your asset out. It's like medieval feudalism.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. And NFTs are, you can argue that in different ways in different regulatory terms, but they're kind of like property rights, right? I'm carrying out my house in my pocket as an NFT, and a Twitter kingdom don't really like me to run out, but I just kept bringing all the stuff as NFT with me and all the money as token, and it's run out. And Mass is trying to say, hey, okay, dude, instead of running away for a new land, we can stay in Twitter and put all this thing into, convert your tweets into NFT and convert your data into some token and, have the IDs. It's like turning all your assets in a Twitter land from feudalism, king granted properties into your own properties and put that in your pocket. And then when the knight of the king arrive, of the duke, whatever, arrive, they figure out, oh, you have the super strong cryptography, bulletproof gate out there. And they tried a few hours to figure out it's not possible to break out until they invent the quantum computer, right? And then they left. Or they feel it's not really what's bothering you anymore. That's what's happening right now. And there is definitely backfire. But overall, I think that's gonna be very, very likely the future.
Would you think of it as, would this be a correct analogy? If I'm in Facebook land, think of a reputation. So a reputation purely in the set, like pre-digital reputation is just, hey, Suji knows Mike. We've known each other for an hour. We've had a good conversation. I've known my brother for 30 years. So we have a stronger degree of reputational ability. And then you add this up in my entire network, and that's your reputation. So you could draw it down to like a simple score or some way of tracking that. When you digitize it in the form of Facebook and Twitter, Snap, it looks like followers, it looks like the number of likes and shares. It's measured in those quantitative ways. When I'm leaving Twitter, I have only the non-digital method to go into the next city. Yes. Like when people leave Facebook, they often carry a large audience when they sign up on Twitter or Instagram for the first time, because people remember them just in their minds, but there's no cryptographic or digital conversion.
Yes.
Do you see Mask playing the role of like almost a reputational conversion in a digital land between these different fiefdoms?
Yeah, I mean, eventually our goal is to dilute value of Web2 platforms, and some platforms are willing to do that themselves, right? The Twitter have, at least Jack have the blue sky. We're one of the founding community member. We really love to, really love to contribute our thoughts. And some really are fuck up, right? Libra is not really doing great things. They just now they have separate teams out of Facebook trying to do that. I mean, it's become a public chain. Not really Facebook want to do what Facebook want to do anymore. And eventually, I think no matter you like it or not, these going to be default solutions for major decentralized platforms. Just like no matter the banks like it or not, stable coins, major legit stable coins become the extent of dollars, right? They become the real digital dollars. And banks on Oracle old-fashioned database dollar has become the non-sexy version of digital dollar, right? And I think that's happening. And one interesting example I like to make is I like to use a lot is like the NFT PFP avatar, right? By connecting the PFP avatar to your Twitter or Facebook or potentially all the other major social network, you are actually connecting your Web2 identity to a Ethereum or Ethereum-like cryptographic address. That's the ID, and then you somehow have a connector between the Facebook city and Twitter city. And that connector is not in the jurisdiction of any of them. Right? That's interesting, even though it's really just a beginning because you cannot transmit data yet, but very soon you're going to be able to share your social graph because you change, I'm Suji NFT, and I changed the NFT PFP on my major platforms. Now people know that's all the same Suji, right? And then they can eventually maybe share a social graph and share the digital identity, share digital asset, and put them together. That's the real you. And the real you is not controlled by any other platform. That's happening. Takes some time, but it's happening,
Wait, overrated or underrated? The Facebook, Meta, VR endeavors. Overrated or underrated?
Overrated. Yeah, definitely overrated.
Yeah.
Even now, right? Facebook is still trying to get into China, and then they're also trying to get into other major market. They have different political system than the US. They have different culture than the US. Then, you have to adjust your system in these countries, right? You can probably add your own censorship system, and then eventually you have to pick a side. That's what's happening in Web2. You pick a side between China and US. You pick a side between two parties. You pick a side between, two sides of the argument, and the platform needs to be neutral, right? That's why we start all these platforms at the early time. And it turns out platform cannot be neutral. That's why we need protocols. Well, maybe protocols have their own problems, but it's way better than the social platforms. That's what we're building and what we deliver.
I don't know what to think about that, about Meta's initiative. All I know is there's a lot of money and a lot of smart people working on it. And I think of it as like, okay, imagine you're wearing a very comfortable glass eyewear thing, and we get to be in the same room instead of just looking at your computer screen. It's like that to me, if you can do that, that's a huge idea. Just to put something on, and Suji is in my office, and he is as real as anything else, and he's indistinguishable from anything else. But we'll see. Obviously, it's years away before they get there.
I mean, the real cool part is I bought an Oculus, right? I bought several VR device, and my friends got their own VR device, and we connect each other in the metaverse. Then I'm gonna start to ask questions. Hey, how can I display my punk? How can I display my ape? Then the question will be handed to Facebook engineers. Say, hey, should we compatible with all those Ethereum NFTs? And then the next question is like, hey, I want to transfer some like $100 to my friends. I want to tip him in stablecoin. Okay, we might just compatible with all the stablecoin. Then the next question is like, hey, I want to migrate my Twitter data here, and also encrypt that, so make sure that Facebook cannot see that. And if you allow all these, the platform just become just a hardware provider.
Yeah, but it seems like the obvious move here is to make it so when you put the glasses on, you're in a decentrally maintained world. Like I think that's the thing that explodes human potential. Yeah. I mean, we'll see if Facebook does that. They could choose to not do that, but interesting. Or Meta. I don't know. I keep going Facebook. All right, Suji, I'll let you run. I know you got a lot of stuff to do, and you are working on an awesome project. So quick question for you. Are you writing or tweeting? I know you have a handle out there, Suji, SUJI_YAN.
Yes, that's me.
I think is your Twitter.
That's me.
Cool. Are you writing or anything else you want to throw out there personally?
I'm trying to write more. I think one of our DAO delegate system major news is going to come soon, and I'd love to share these articles later on. Yeah, and reach out to me, DM open. I'm super glad to talk to everyone on Twitter, and eventually encryptedly through mass network. Yeah.
Sweet, man. All right. Well, thank you for joining, and keep doing your thing. Much luck.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right.